Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers at night may become a wolf when the wolf vein blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Arr!
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey
into the outer realms.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 113 of Into the Outer Realms. I am your host, Joey Medea. I am deeply grateful that you take time on a Thursday night with your busy lives, so many choices on television and, cable and all the platforms and other podcasts and all, to spend some time with me. I always hope to make it worth your while. So tonight, a subject that's near and dear to my heart. Whenever I do a top 10, or in this case, top 12 or so list of films that I love that have to do with the paranormal or supernatural, I always want to tie them to history. Well, werewolves is such a big subject. I talked about it for over an hour a couple weeks ago. Then I was on the Mantz and Mitchell radio show. Thanks to Gary and Suzanne for having me on, talking even more about cases, causes, the psychology, the typology of werewolves. So tonight what I want to do is I do want to talk about these movies that I've watched over the last couple of weeks, again, many of which I've loved since I was a kid, but I do want to tie them and refer them back because the themes are big, the same way that American Westerns, classic American Westerns, have a lot of religious themes and other kinds of themes. Werewolf movies are very much steeped in heavy thematic issues. You'll see some of them very much as we go. So let me jump into the chat room here. It's already hopping. Say hello to everyone. Hey, Craig. Hi. I hope you and Rebecca are having a great time on vacation, enjoying her birthday, and I appreciate you being with us. Michael, hi. Happy Thursday. CL, Ronald, Jessica, Mario, Michelle, Candace, Charles, April, hi, welcome back. I know it's been a while. Welcome to everyone. So I'm going to try to keep this to an hour tonight. I'm also going to try to keep it fun. So I do have a slideshow for you. You can see how werewolves have been betrayed in some cases, not quite a Freudian slip, but have been portrayed and at times betrayed in the films by designs and decisions that were made. I'll let you know what I think works really, really well. I love the metaphor, just as like with a vampire movie. The closer it is to the metaphor of the other, of people who drain the life out of you. We all know psychic vampires. They've been made especially famous through What We Do in the Shadows, which I'm going to talk to you about tonight briefly and not in the greatest way. Hi, Mike Sanchez. But anyhow, so why don't we just get started? I am going to bring up this Let's see, I've been practicing this. There you go. So I'm going to be small. You don't need to see me the whole time. I'll kind of pop in and out. And this is werewolves in pop culture. So let's just start. I'm going to go, rather than ranking them according to what I love the best, I'm going to rank them from oldest to newest, because there are some remakes on the list. There are 3 movies, all that came out in 1981. It was certainly the year of the werewolf. They're 3 very different films. So let's get started here. So what is our fascination with werewolves? I would love to hear from you guys. Do you like werewolves? Do you not like werewolves? Where do they live on sort of like your hierarchy of monsters and things that you love? For instance, I'm not real big into Bigfoot. I absolutely despise zombies, but of course I'm a huge Mothman fanatic. I'm delivering the first draft of my musical next week, and the escape room should be opening up in the next couple of months in Point Pleasant. Bigfoot, not so much. Zombies, no. Werewolves, yes, please. Vampires, yes, please. So I'm kind of hold on there. Sorry, I just was looking in the chat room trying to do too much. And but anyhow, so I love werewolves very much. So let's get started here and get right on track. So of course we have to start with the Wolfman, 1941, Universal Pictures, who brought you Frankenstein, who brought you Dracula, who brought you Phantom of the Opera. Phantom of the Opera starred Lon Chaney Sr., well, the Wolfman stars Lon Chaney Jr. A pretty pedestrian, in clothes almost the whole time. He's got a nice hairdo like Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London. He's got a really nice do going on there, but a very troubled man. So some things about the film. Evelyn Ankers stars in it. Claude Rains, who went on to play the Phantom of the Opera. Ralph Bellamy, Patrick Knowles, Bela Lugosi. It was so hard for Hollywood. He became such a huge star, and Universal had him under contract, but they often didn't know what to do with him. He had a very thick accent. He had a limited range as an actor. He had those terrific eyes really going for him. So they put him in this movie as a gypsy, and he does a pretty good job. And then Maria Openskaya, who plays the gypsy queen, and she's quite good in the film. So like I said, Rains went on to be the Phantom of the Opera. 3 years earlier, he played the Invisible Man, another classic Hollywood monster. So the Wolfman sets out to educate us right from the beginning. So there's an open book in the opening credits, and it defines lycanthropy, which is a disease of the mind. So they're telling you, okay, these people aren't really werewolves. They just think that they are. Humans only imagine that they're wolves. And it says very clearly, no, it's legend that they can actually physically turn, which links it to the gypsies, who are much more superstitious than the other people. Of course, the poem that I read in the opening, and I read in the opening of the last show, very prominent in this movie. It's the cautionary tale. No matter what you do, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you will become a werewolf. So it's very much a curse. The next movie I'm going to talk about uses curse right in the title because it's an homage to this movie. But anyway, it starts with a son, Lawrence Talbot. He's been away for a long time. He's wanted to have his own identity, and his brother unexpectedly dies, and he becomes heir to the Talbot fortune, to Talbot Mansion. And so he travels home to the estate. So he and Evelyn kind of hit it off. She's got a boyfriend played by Patrick Knowles, but he's kind of charming in sort of an awkward way. Lon Chaney Jr. is. And they go out, they go to a carnival, they see the gypsy camp, and so they decide that they're going to see the gypsies and get a fortune reading. It's very bad news for Evelyn. She has the pentagram show up on her. Bela Lugosi won't tell her what's wrong. He just tells her she's got to go home. She needs to get out and she needs to leave. Well, she's attacked by a wolf, and Lon Chaney Jr. kills the wolf with a silver walking stick. and he gets bitten in the process. So here he is, the man who's traveled home to this kind of strange land where he's got to reincorporate with his father and, with family life and all of that. And he winds up becoming the werewolf, and it kind of goes downhill from there. Now, this is the introduction. It's a big trope in werewolf movies, the protective amulet. Well, the amulet doesn't work. The other big trope from werewolf movies, as you'll see as we go, is that love can save you. Because this is, after all, and we had a very interesting discussion on Mantz and Mitchell about the psychology. Did werewolves really exist? Was it just that people believed in them so much? Yes, culturally. So certain cultures did. Eastern European cultures did. Certainly French culture did. All through the 1500s, and so many prevalence of cases there. If you don't believe in it, you don't allow for it. But he transforms, like in this figure that I have here from the Universal Collection. The amulet fails to save him, and love fails to save him. Even though the woman chooses him, she tries so hard to save him. Nothing can overcome that wolf, that beast, that inner monster when it is let loose. And so his father is the one that kills him, which becomes a prevalent theme in these kind of movies. So I showed you the figure, but this is just a really cool design. And keep in mind, this is 1941. They do it with stop motion, the transformation. They show the hands a lot. That's a very prevalent trope in almost all werewolf movies. It starts with the hands, where the hair comes and all of that kind of thing, and then they go from there. So the next movie that I want to talk about, like I said, is an echo of this. It's exactly 20 years later, and it's by the genius Terence Fisher, who did so many of the great Hammer films. If you're not familiar with the Hammer films, they're very sexy. They can be very campy. But they have Peter Cushing, and they have Christopher Lee as Dracula and many other characters. And I happen to love this movie very much, The Curse of the Werewolf. So this takes a different take on exactly how someone becomes a werewolf. So the child is produced because there's a beggar, and he shows up, and there's this very, very evil marquis who gives him some food, but then he tortures him in front of all these people, and then he locks him away for a very long time, and he becomes a wolf. He becomes a wolf in that sense of lycanthropy. His hair grows long. His beard grows long. He's eating barely cooked meat for decades. And so a servant girl comes in, and he manages to get her in the cell, and he rapes her, and the child is born. So she winds up killing him, and the baby is adopted out. And so there's a curse involved, right? It's called the Curse of the Werewolf. The curse works on many different levels. And the curse says this, that unwanted babies born on Christmas are an insult to heaven, and they are cursed. So everyone in the household is hoping that this baby is not born on Christmas Day. Now, as the mother reaches for the baby, she's going to love it. She's going to accept it. She's going to nurture it. She expires. She dies after giving birth. Now, to me, this is kind of a cheat because she's already demonstrated her love. But anyway, the curse has enacted. They try to baptize the baby the first time. There's a storm, and the baptismal font is roiling. I mean, this is just spawn of the devil. Curse, curse, curse. That's the road that they take. But once the sign of the cross is put on the baby's head, then everything is good. So the child for many years is kind of okay. But then he's out, and one of the men of the manor is teaching him how to hunt. And the man shoots a squirrel. So mostly for plot convenience, because it's kind of sick, he says to the kid, like, you have to kind of love what you kill. So here, take this dead squirrel and give it a kiss. And the kid tastes the blood of the squirrel. And so it's on. So he breaks out of his room. And of course, goats and sheep and all kinds of things are being found. Rabbits with their throats torn out. And everybody's wondering what's going on. So his adoptive father, who really loves him and is really trying to help him, he goes to see a priest. And another major trope from the films now is introduced that's used over and over again. A weak soul, an unprotected soul, an unloved soul, in this case, a bastard soul, a motherless, fatherless soul is vulnerable possession by the spirit of an animal. It's the war of the soul and the wolf. Remember that, because that operates in so many of our cultural stories about wolves. The war of the human soul, and of course, the analog of the wolf. And wolf is the hungry wolf at the door. The wolf is from the opening, from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Gary Oldman's Dracula turns into the wolf. He rapes Lucy. It's very, very much that very very virile, very lupine, to kill and to have sex with, and all of those kinds of things. So this is really introduced here. But love is the only way to save you. Love's the only way to save you. That's the amulet. That's the cure. That's the protection. And so it's Oliver Reed, and he shows up about a third of the way in the movie. He is so good. He's so wonderful, but he falls in love. And the minute that he falls in love and his blood gets pumping, what happens? He turns into the wolf. And I happen to think that this is wonderful. Again, this is 1961. Look at this. It's terrific. You can still see the expression of the face. It still kind of looks like him, but it's also clearly a wolf. For my money, this works really well. Some of the movies that are coming up, these kind of things don't happen, quite that way. So let's move on now. We're going to jump ahead another 20 years. There's some very interesting symmetries here. 1941 is the first big one. Then we sort of have this remake homage through the lens of Hammer instead of Universal here in the United States. And then another 20 years, we have a trilogy of movies. I'm going to put them in the order from least like to absolutely love. And the Howling, I kind of least like. So the Howling has Dee Wallace, Patrick McNee, Dennis Dugan, Kevin McCarthy, John Carradine, Slim Pickens. It's directed by Joe Dante, a very, very good director. And the script is co-written by John Sayles, who's written a lot of really good stuff. As a matter of fact, John Sayles had written the first draft of a very different conception of E.T. that wasn't made. But John Sayles has had a lot. So there's a lot of talent in this movie, but it just, it wants to be a serious horror movie, and just the technology and all that really wasn't on its side. So this movie becomes interesting because werewolves can change at any time. They're not at all tied to the moon. And that's a plot convenience. We don't only want these wolves to come out. Also, there are cult aspects, and it really plays on the psychology. So there's certain plot spoilers for some of these movies because they're so old. But for this one, I won't spoil it for you if you want to revisit it or you want to watch it for the first time. I do love the psychology, cult, the mind of the serial killer, the mind of a group of killers. All of these things operate very much in this kind of movie. Twisting, psychology, and the relationship between the psychologist and the patient. There's a lot going on with sexual degeneracy. It's early 1980s, so that's a kind of a preoccupation, the whole sexual dynamics thing. The whole sexual revolution from the 60s is kind of course directing, becoming something new. We're getting into the age of AIDS and all of that kind of stuff. All this is going on. They do pay a lot of homages in this movie. So they do use the poem from the original Wolfman. They implant wolf products and homages throughout the film. One of my favorites is sitting on the desk of Dennis Dugan while he's on the phone is Allen Ginsberg's Howl. And there's also a can you'll see sitting on I believe it's a filing cabinet at the camp that's in the second act that are Howl beans or wolf beans. I believe it's wolf beans. So that's kind of pretty interesting. Here's the problem. This isn't too bad. This is a guy who's just been turned into a wolf. He's in the middle of intercourse right here, and he's really just giving away. He and his wife are really having problems. She's kind of rejected him. She had a terrible experience, and sort of this witchy sort of cult princess lures him out. He gets turned, and he's sort of doing his thing. But again, we can see the human features enhanced with the wolf. So that's the kind of thing that's really, really kind of operating there. That's interesting. And then unfortunately, it kind of devolves when they get more and more sophisticated, they get more comfortable in their turning, they sort of become this thing, which isn't too terribly bad. I chose one that's sort of in shadow with some strategic lighting, but not the best werewolf movie of 1981. I think you could do better. And so we're going to go into Wolfen. Same year, 1981, Whitley Strieber wrote the novel. Whitley Strieber really knows what he's doing. He tells these stories like Richard Matheson does. He tells a horror story with a lot of really human depth. What he chose to do with Wolfen was not to have humans turn into wolves, but the wolves are actually wolves. They're spirits. They are tied to Native Americanism. So Wolfen is very much about the decimation of the native tribes and the decimation of the wolf packs. If you added the buffalo in there, it would be a perfect trilogy. But you have these Native Americans. Now, the Native Americans do practice a form of shape-shifting, but it's more of the Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda. I'm still in my human form, but my imagination is so strong that something's going on. So a young Edward James Olmos strips naked on the beach and is running around, jumping, waving his hands like claws, howling, and being very, very much under the full moon, this sort of lycanthropic, but not because of insanity, but because of these beliefs, these very, very strong beliefs. So I don't mean to ignore the chat room, but it's too much to do tonight with the slideshow and everything like that. So I'll go back and read comments and comment on them in the next couple of days, just so you know. I'm going to keep moving on here. So this stars Albert Finney, Diane Venora, Edward James Olmos, I already mentioned, Gregory Hines and Tom Noonan, who were terrific. And like I said, it's based on the novel by Whitley Strieber. So when the wolves do reveal themselves after these series of horrible killings, and Tom Noonan plays a zoologist who's very, very into wolves and educates people about them, their true nature, and all those different kinds of things. They hunt down the wolves, the police, to prevent the killings, and there's contention with the Native Americans. There's a whole section of the city that's being knocked down and gotten rid of for big development. So it's got all those different themes. It kind of hints to 1994's Wolf, which I'm really excited to talk about, where metaphor is really the driver until it isn't anymore. So that's Wolfen. Now, the third movie from 1981, some of you could probably guess what it is. It's American Werewolf in London. Man, this is my all-time favorite werewolf movie. Written and directed by John Landis, and it is just brilliant. Layer after layer after layer. Look at this poster. So you have Griffin Dunn on the left, and you have David Naughton on the right. Notice that he is wearing a red jacket, Little Red Riding Hood. They go to this tavern, which is a very, very big homage to the Hammer films. The stranger always shows up in the strange land in the tavern. Nobody really wants to talk to him. And they all have this secret. They all have this horrible, horrible secret. And there's this inner tension between everyone. Do we warn them? Do we help them? Do we ignore them? Are they in wrong place, wrong time? Are we culpable? Are we not culpable? Responsibility is a huge theme in this movie, which I just love. And they say to them, stay on the path. Don't leave the road. So it's so Little Red Riding Hood, which is great. But they do stray from the path. and they wind up getting themselves lost. Griffin Dunne is killed outright by this werewolf, and David Naughton is just wounded. Some of the other really, really cool things. First of all, the special effects were by the brilliant Rick Baker, and I'm just gonna skip ahead and I'm gonna leave this up here. I mean, this is awesome. When David Naughton turns for the first time, he's alone in this nurse's apartment. She's gone to work. She had been taking care of him. It's Jenny Agutter. And if you happen to watch Call the Midwife, this is not Sister Julienne. She's about 50 years younger, 40 years younger. She's absolutely stunning, totally beautiful. Anyway, she's at work, and he turns and he goes on a massive rampage. Again, there is just no way to save them after they've been bit, after they've been cursed, after they have that wolf analog inside of them. So this movie has fun with so many things. It uses Blue Moon twice at the beginning and the end. It uses Creedence Clearwater Revival's Bad Moon Rising. I mean, it is just fun. It is campy, but it's also serious. Griffin Dunne is killed, and he haunts David Naughton. He keeps showing up to him. And as time goes by, as the days go by, he's deteriorating more and more and more. But it's Rick Baker. So even the animatronic, like really rotted, like eyeballs ready to come out of the head, is still pretty phenomenal. And he says, look, you're responsible, man. I was killed. You've killed other people. And it was this very weird scene, because the movies love to play with this sexual thing. It's movies. And they want to get audience, and they're horror movies. So they want to have this sexual component. So David Naughton winds up in this adult movie theater. And this pretty graphic movie is playing while Griffin Dunne is sitting next to him, talking to him, kind of harassing him. His face is practically falling off. And all the people that David F. Naughton has killed are all sitting there like ripped and torn apart. And he's like, you got to do something. You got to make this good. You got to kill yourself. You got to end your life. You got to eradicate yourself. And this was really, really a very unique take on the whole thing that I deeply, deeply appreciate. It gets very weird. If you watched episode 111, my first werewolf show a couple weeks ago, I talked about Nazi brigades in World War II that closely identified with the wolf. They were called the Wolf Brigades. They had a very special badge. I also mentioned this controversy that's going on in Ukraine with these neo-Nazi groups, and some parliament members from Greece walked out a couple of days ago because a couple of speakers from one of these neo-Nazi brigades were on the screen. Zelensky had them talking to generate support, and the Greek parliamentarian said, this is very odd. We support Ukraine, but what do you do when there's Nazis? This is very, very awkward. So these neo-Nazi groups that associate with the wolf still do exist to this day. And there's this weird fantasy sequence, but there are these goblin-like, wolf-like creatures that are shooting the place up, and they are dressed in Nazi regalia. So there you go. Good evening to you, Mark. So I think that's what I want to say. Oh, it does pay homage. The great directors and writers pay homage to the things that come before, and they do pay homage to both Curse of the Werewolf and the Wolfman, which I absolutely love. And pretty, it's actually in the dialogue. So it's like, we're in the know, the writer's in the know, we know where we came from, and we're going to kind of take our own thing. And of course, love can save him. So again, this is the early stage. And then he becomes something else, the full transformation into the wolf. There's no human being there at all. And Jenny Agutt's character tries to save him. She walks down the alley with the police behind her, and she tries to get him to recognize her, to see her, to get that recognition, that very popular werewolf trope. And he lunges for her, and they kill him, and he transfers back into a human. And the minute that he transforms back into a human, it's over. Like roll credits, like boom, there he is, naked, bullet holes, credits. So there just is no more. Howie, thank you. Good evening, my fellow traveler, and thanks for sharing out. So you're just in time for, I think, the worst werewolf movie that I've ever seen. I haven't watched like the other 3 or 4 or 5 Howling movies. I really don't like American Werewolf in France or Paris, American Werewolf in Paris. I think it's absolutely horrible. But this is one that I did watch from our old friend Stephen King, who can be very brilliant and then can throw out a real clunker. So this is 1985. I'm a junior in high school, and I don't know what to tell you. It's got a chubby Gary Busey in it. It's got a young Corey Haim, and he's worth watching. Everett McGill, who you may know from Twin Peaks, the owner of the diner, he's his love interest, and the woman who winds up getting the eye patch, some of the names are escaping me, she's his wife. Everett McGill, tall man with a deep Southern accent. He plays a priest. Stephen King has problems with priests. I just finished watching all of the Salem's Lot miniseries again, and Tanya and I read the book together. We just did finish that, and the priest that doesn't have enough faith to keep him safe, so the soul gets corrupted. That's the deal in this one. A fairly young Terry O'Quinn from Lost is in it, so there are people worth seeing in it. It's a short story that King based the screenplay on called Cycle of the Werewolf that he wrote. There's a smiley face kite, and I think that's an echo and homage to the Howling, where there's a smiley face on the door in an adult bookstore. Like I said, these movies are just full of these sexual degeneracy tropes and all, which also kind of echoes the weird smiley face killer thing. Anybody who's into that sort of weird serial killer thing, the missing 411 and all, there's this smiley face thing that shows up, and those killings and all that. There's somewhat of an analog of the wolf there, just in the way they're done and things like that. Again, not tied to the moon. The werewolf can change at any time, but they're much stronger, and it's a much fuller transformation when the moon comes out. And then when it's finally revealed, we are subjected to this. It just looks like a bear to me. It doesn't even look like a wolf at all. So when you see all of that kind of stuff, that's the payoff. Not terrific. I don't know if it's worth it. Feel free to disagree with me, but I'm pretty sure that this is a pretty terrible movie. But here's my second favorite. My second favorite werewolf movie of all time, Wolf from 1994. Now, Jack Nicholson is one of the 5 actors or so that when I was in high school, along with Tom Hanks, Jeff Goldblum, Kevin Costner, and Michael Keaton, made me want to be an actor. And for a very, very long time, Jack Nicholson was absolutely at the top of that list. A fundamentally wonderful actor, but always kind of playing some version of himself. He does it, I think, way better than De Niro does, for instance. So anyway, it's Wolf. It's 1994. Mike Nichols directed it. Mike Nichols is absolutely brilliant. When you get a really, really good director like Steven Spielberg, Mike Nichols, John Landis doing horror or supernatural or paranormal, it's amazing. It's awesome because there's so much depth thematically. It's not just the killing and the gore and the throwaway and the kooky and the nutty. So it's Jack Nicholson, like I said, of course, the absolutely radiant, beautiful Michelle Pfeiffer that Tanya reminds me of so much. James Spader, Kate Nelligan, Christopher Plummer, Puri, David Hyde Pierce, Prunella Scales, Ron Rifkin, Allison Janney, I think, doing one of her first roles, and a very, very young pre-Friends David Schwimmer playing a cop, like in one little scene. So all of you actors out there, you have to start somewhere. And starting out in a Mike Nichols movie starring James Spader, Jack Nicholson, and Michelle Pfeiffer is a pretty darn good way to do it. It's good work if you can get it. So it starts out with Jack on a snowy road in the car at night, so stylistic, and he hits a wolf. So he gets out of the car and he goes to the wolf, and is it dead? And he pokes it with a stick, and already you're going like, what are you doing? Just like go away. But no, he tries to grab it and drag it off the road, and he gets bitten. So, excuse me, one could say, again, you're trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get the wolf off the road so that it doesn't get smashed to smithereens and a car doesn't run it over and maybe have an accident or something. And he gets bitten. So his intentions are very, very good. Well, he's driving home that night, and with the storm, Mike Nichols uses this distortion of the. I tried to find a still of it, and I couldn't. He looks like the werewolf. So there's a little hint there from the very, very beginning, which is wonderful. Then he goes home, and his hand is bandaged, and he's gargling, and his gargle becomes a growl. So another really, really cool, subtle hint. Now, as he progresses, the changes are super subtle, and I tracked them. First is the appetite. He wants its meat raw. He wants a lot of meat, steak, all that kind of good stuff. He's an older guy now and has dropped off a little in the sexual department. But he and his wife have sex for the first time in a long time. It's absolutely amazing because now he's got wolf blood and all that kind of thing. Then his smell improves. He's passing a guy in the hallway and he's like, hey, you shouldn't be drinking before work. So that was kind of cool. Then his eyesight improves. He's not wearing eyeglasses anymore. And then it's his hearing. So very little Red Riding Hood with the eyes and with the smell and with the nose and with all of that kind of thing, and the big appetite, which is sometimes coded in the Little Red Riding Hood stories for a sexual appetite. If you think of Into the Woods and the Wolf, it's very, very much about that. So he seeks out Puri, who's an expert on these things, who tells him, yeah, this is spirit possession by an animal. But you're going to be okay if you're a good man. And Jack Nicholson kind of has this crisis moment. I don't know if I'm a good man. I don't think I'm a good man. And he says, you seem to me like a good man, so I think you're going to be okay. He's like, I just don't know about that. And the guy says, you know what? I'm dying of cancer. I was wondering if you could bite me because werewolves will live forever. Jack Nicholson says, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Proving that he is the good man, but is he good enough? This is where the metaphor really, really shines and becomes really exciting for me about werewolf movies, books, even songs, and the heavy metaphors. When this movie stays in the realm of metaphor, it works so exquisitely well because he is competitive. Because he has to have wolf instincts. The publishing company where he's senior editor has just been bought in a hostile takeover by Christopher Plummer. And he has this mentee, James Spader, who's a real backstabber. Sorry, plot spoilers, but 1994. So that's expired. But I will warn you, cover your ears if you don't want to know. Watch the movie. But he stabs Jack Nicholson in the back. Let me just say in two different ways. I'll keep it a little obscure there. So we have to wonder, in that corporate world, the corporate raider trying to get ahead, stealing other people's spouses, all these different kinds of things, lying and cheating your way to the top. It's very much the analog of the wolf. And what does the good man do? What choices do we make? How far do we want to go? And what are we willing to sell? I think somebody needs to do a really good werewolf movie, maybe in Washington, D.C. I don't have time to write it, but anybody who wants it, go ahead and run with it. But it's that kind of analog. There is a really cool homage. Jack Nicholson is randomly smoking a pipe. He looks very awkward with the pipe. I don't think he knew how to smoke a pipe. But in the 1941, The Wolfman, everybody smokes a pipe. As a matter of fact, when I was watching that movie 3 weeks ago, I had to pack a pipe and smoke it because I was getting this incredible craving. So I think that's what that was about. So that's very much an homage to the original Wolfman. And this movie also plays on the idea that the intense virility, the enhanced eyesight, smell, physical capability, an old man who's acting like he's a 20-year-old, that these are all gifts, but they're gifts that come with a price. Arguably, any gift that we're given comes with a price, right? Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So it becomes very much a cautionary tale. So it, like I said, operates mostly metaphorically, which is very, very good. It does incorporate the amulet trope. So he is given an amulet by Ampuri's character. It does not work. These things just never work. I think there's another cool homage in this movie. This is really for the cinephiles out there. But there's a terrific scene in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, where Jack is laying in bed and he hasn't quite transformed, and he does very much become the analog of the wolf in The Shining. Even though Stephen King hated that movie, it's better than his own werewolf movie. But there is this analog that they're playing off of. And so he's at Michelle Pfeiffer's house. He spent the night. She asks him what he wants for breakfast, and he says, "I'd like eggs, toast, and bacon." There's a wonderful scene in The Shining where Wendy brings Jack breakfast in bed. He slept. He's had the best sleep of his life. It's like 11:30 in the morning, and he's laying there and he's dipping the bacon into the egg yolk while he's eating, and he's slightly feral, just a little hint of crazy. So I think that's what's going on there. The werewolf design is wonderful. I mean, it's Jack Nicholson. It's Jack Nicholson needing his teeth filed and a pretty good shave. Other than that, it's very, very much Jack Nicholson. And if you have Jack Nicholson, you want him. You don't want him under pounds and pounds of makeup and prosthetics and all kinds of nonsense. It also narrows the gap and keeps the metaphor the most prevalent, because we remember this is a man that's now just gotten the wolf appetite, and it works very well. They do the same thing with James Spader. He's the creepy guy. He's going to possess anything that Jack Nicholson wants. In this case, Michelle Pfeiffer. He tries to rape her in the stable, and that's what breaks Jack Nicholson loose. He forsakes the amulet that's diminishing his power, and he saves Michelle Pfeiffer. But it's also the young protege and the old mentor having it out for dominion, because unfortunately, in our social landscape, they can't really coexist. Although I'm getting up there in age, and a lot of my mentees, I still support them. They still have respect for me. And so it is possible. But in this world, it just simply isn't. In this high finance, high stakes world, it simply isn't for them. Then I think there's another little homage. So it turns out that Michelle Pfeiffer is also going to become a werewolf, and they do it very, very subtly, just with a change of the eyes. And she has the closing monologue. But any Ladyhawke fans out there, of course, she falls in love with Rutger Hauer, who is a black wolf during the day. No, at night he's a wolf while she's human. While she's human during the day, while he's human during the day, she's Ladyhawke. There's a curse from a corrupt holy man. I love Ladyhawke. It's just spectacular. I hope there are Ladyhawke fans out there. So I just had to bring that up because I really do think that was another wonderful homage. Excuse me. I put a movie in here next, which is not a shapeshifter movie. It's not a werewolf movie. But I love it. And if you're into wolves, if you're into the analog of the wolf, there's a French language film, The Brotherhood of the Wolf. The guy on the left with the black mask on, if you're a fan of Iron Chef, he's the frozen peas guy. It's amazing to put that together a couple weeks ago. I was looking at his IMDb page, and yeah, he's the frozen peas guy. I talked in the first show about Skinwalker Ranch, the idea of these skinwalkers, these changers. And there's a very, very chilling story about the Gorman family that opens up George Knapp and Colin Kelleher's book about the ranch, which Kelleher led the NIDS team under Bigelow that studied it for a really long time and won't tell anybody really anything. The book is a horrible, horrible whitewash, but an interesting story from the Gormans about shooting a wolf, point blank range, with a heavy gauge rifle. These are ranchers, they're hunters, they know what they're doing. The thing kind of looks at them and walks away into the woods. So, excuse me again. This shoot it, but it doesn't die. So we have that theme in there. They also play, which with pagans, witches. It's all very misunderstood. Frozen Peas guy is actually from the Iroquois and Mohawk tribes. There's a lot about totem animals. I talked a lot about that on Mantz and Mitchell last Saturday. The idea of believing in totems. I have several strong totem animals: the raven, the red-tailed hawk, the red fox, and the wolf. And in the winter, really, I try to tune into bear. And these can be very close, very powerful relationship, and they can be very protective. So this is based on a real case, this movie. So it's also worth bringing in to bridge that gap there. The Beast of Gavaudan, which terrorized citizens in the French countryside from 1764 to 1767. They didn't know if it was a wolf, an enhanced wolf, a feral dog. The conception in this movie, I don't want to give it away, but it's something that's not a wolf, that sort of has armor and bamboo and leather and all these kinds of things. It's trained to kill for a larger purpose. The movie has very, very heavy religious themes. Again, wolves, Satan, wolves used against Satan, wolves used in the service of Satan. So there are a lot of really complex levels. It's a little bit of martial arts. It's a little bit stylized. Monica Bertolucci's in it. You can watch it just for that reason. She's absolutely wonderful. And the cast is actually all quite good. I don't mind watching the subtitles for a foreign language film when it's that good at all. I don't know what your feelings are about that kind of thing. So let's move on now. Another movie that when I first saw this, when it first came out, I love Benicio del Toro, love Emily Blunt, love Anthony Hopkins. So when I see a subject matter that I love with actors that I adore, I get really, really excited. Sometimes we get disappointed. The first time I watched this, I really liked that, and that's Hugo Weaving back there, behind them there, peeking out. So this, of course, is a remake from the 1941 film. Benicio del Toro is Lawrence Talbot, same name, and he returns home. His brother's been murdered. In this case, his brother's been murdered by a wolf. So they just kind of close the gap. They tighten up the storytelling a little more than in the 1941 movie. There's the tavern trope. There's the amulet trope. There's the gypsy camp trope. It doesn't travel too far away. And when it stays close, it does pretty well. I really like in this movie that they make Benicio del Toro a Shakespearean actor. So the actor is capable of transforming. That's what we do. We use our imaginations and we transform. And there are some brilliant, brilliant actors out there. Jared Leto is one of them. Billy Bob Thornton is one of them. There's so many that they transform completely. You can't even recognize them. They change their voice. They change their gait. Meryl Streep is a wonderful, wonderful chameleon. So they really play on this trope, which I love. And they say something right out in the movie, pretending to be someone else or something else. And that travels back to the totem, or that really quintessential moment between Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda in the books, when Carlos Castaneda becomes a bird. And he says to Don Juan, did I really become a bird? And he says, if you believed that you did, you did. So that is kind of cool. Then they play with another interesting trope, a little bit of an homage, a little bit of an echo. I have talked about a little of this when I did Three Gothic Doctors, but Hugo Weaving's character is called Francis Aberline. He is an echo of Frederick Aberline, who was the lead investigator during the Jack the Ripper murders, a very, very, very respected Scotland Yard inspector who could not catch Jack the Ripper. And he died. And he retired to go garden and work on clocks, which is what he used to do. So a very, very precise man. The year of this movie is 1891. That's 3 years after the Jack the Ripper killings. As I've mentioned on a previous show, I'm writing a Jack the Ripper novel. So it's the third novel in the series with 3 Gothic doctors: Frankenstein, Jekyll, Moreau. Sherlock Holmes, which just came out, which kind of set me on this whole werewolf path again, because there is a shape-shifting werewolf in that Sherlock Holmes book. And then I'm going to follow up with Jack the Ripper. A few of you asked me to please do a show on Jack the Ripper, and I'm going to do that for you. I think the third week in May, second or third week in May. I'm pulling all my research together. But anyway, so we have this Francis Aberline. Frederick Aberline's the lead Ripper investigator. There are lots of Ripper references in this movie. Again, the sex and violence dyad, the deviancy, the violence, sometimes between those two things. There's a very interesting story, just really quickly. When the Ripper murders were happening, especially the early ones in August, Jekyll and Hyde was playing at the Lyceum Theater, Henry Irving's theater. It was a very big deal. It was an illegal production, just FYI. Copyright laws were very different. Stevenson did not give permission, but he hadn't created a stage production on his own. In those days, if nobody had done it, you could take a book that just came out and adapt it because there is no adaptation. So this is running. It's very successful in a major theater, and people were accusing the actor who played, I think his last name was Myrick or Maybrick. They were accusing him of being the Jack the Ripper because his Edward Hyde was so good and nobody could possibly act that well. So really nice job, the directors and people from the Wolfman kind of bringing all that in and packaging it. It just doesn't save the film. The film really kind of devolves. It takes a very, very different hook, a different turn from the Wolfman. And like I said on Mantz and Mitchell last Saturday, I am not a fan of flipping the bones just to flip the bones. Flipping the bones is what we talk about as screenwriters, as playwrights, where you take something and rather than doing the expected to do the trope, you do something completely different. They try to do this with this movie, and it just doesn't work, because the werewolf movies that succeed the best, there has to be the attempt for love to save, and that gets very, very diminished in this movie. I mean, Emily Blunt tries her heart out, but it just kind of doesn't work. It's also, too, you'll see when Benicio del Toro turns, it is very much Beauty and the Beast. It is on that spectrum of the wolf that's kind of also mixed with the buffalo or the bull. That's very, very Beauty and the Beast, and love cannot save this poor beast. Beauty and the Beast, of course, is very, very tightly linked in story history with Little Red Riding Hood. Essentially, a lot of the same foundational stuff, very closely linked. And of course, Beauty and the Beast is the foundation for Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera. Again, where you have that analog of where violence and love are constantly competing. Love doesn't save him. She can kill him, although, she does kill him, actually, is exactly what's going on. So it's very Of Mice and Men. Emily Blunt kills him so that the mob doesn't. So she stands in for the father, because the father is a very, very different role in this movie that is very, very disappointing to me. Remember, the first two big werewolf movies, 1941 and 1961, Wolfman and Curse of the Werewolf, it is the father that kills him so that the mob doesn't. So now they have it's good. It's empowering. The lover comes in and do it. It does succeed on that kind of level. So we're kind of getting short on time here. I just want to talk about the Underworld movies. I really kind of love the first three. The second one, I love a really good origin story. The actors that have been in these movies, I mean, it's crazy. The first three were written by Danny McBride. They were directed by Les Weisman, and they're pretty darn good. You got Kate Beckinsale. You got Michael Sheen is phenomenal. Watch the first one and the third one, if for no other reason than Michael Sheen. He's really, really the star and steals the show in Rise of the Lycans, which is the third one. You have Bill Nye, who's in it, who's always brilliant, and it's a little hint of what he goes on to play with Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. The way he talks and the things he does, he's just so brilliant, Bill Nye. So the Underworld movies, the good ones, the first three are kind of Matrix meets Lost Boys, which can be a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Werewolves, again, they can change at will because they've been around for absolute centuries, and they're very, very ferocious. They do, they look like full-on wolf. That's just what they're like. Right off the bat, thematically, these movies are terrific. And that's mostly what I want to talk about. They get into issues of mixed blood, racial impurity. Again, you're talking about vampires, and vampires, this is where flipping the bones really does work. Here's a really good example. Vampires were very much the British fear of the polluting of their pure bloodlines by Eastern Europeans. That is a huge operational thematic trope in the Dracula stories. This foreign other coming in, it's something that England still grapples with to this day, the idea of foreigners coming in. And so they really, really focus on that, and it's very good. The second one, they're all 3 years apart, and until it's 5 years apart between the fourth and the fifth. So 2006 is the second one. Tony Curran, who I absolutely love, Derek Jacobi, who I got to see live in Philadelphia when I was in college, and Sting was in the audience, not too far away from me. That was a very, very cool night. So Derek Jacobi plays the progenitor of the whole line of what became werewolves and vampires. Very, very interesting. It has the country tavern trope. Like I said, origin story 2009, Rise of the Lycans. Michael Sheen is absolutely brilliant. Watch it for that, if for no other reason. And werewolves now have become a slave class to vampires. So it's very much this enslavement idea, impurity, don't mix the races. One of the vampires, of course, falls in love with the werewolf. Suddenly it's very Romeo and Juliet, with the two houses at war of each other and a lot of innocent people getting caught in the middle. There are echoes of eugenics. They talk about mixed blood childs as a monstrosity, about impurity of the blood. This was something that J.K. Rowling picked up very much with the idea of the muggles and the purebred wizards. And this is so operative in our society, and it is done extremely, extremely well. Danny McBride really focuses on it nicely. By the time we get to 2012, the movie Awakening, humans no longer kill each other because they have an other. The vampires and werewolves makes you think of X-Men. We are the enemy they've been waiting for. A lot of talk with disclosure, with the warping of what a lot of these ETs, these extraterrestrial interdimensional beings might be, and the fact that they're not to be trusted, and the government has to protect us, and all of that. So it kind of echoes that whole thing. Hey, we just need a common enemy. Something that Werner von Braun was saying, that aliens would then become that common enemy thing. So are we there? He seems to be in the know. He knew that a guy named Elon was going to go to Mars. Werner von Braun. So maybe there was something to the Nazis bending time and space and all of that kind of stuff. Stephen Ray is in it. Wes Bentley's in it. They can't save it. Not a good movie, Awakenings. And even worse, well, maybe slightly better, but still pretty bad, is Blood Wars. Tobias Menzies is in it. Charles Dance is in it. I love these guys. They just can't save it. So that's all those werewolves. I'm just gonna go back really quick because I absolutely love this. So I'm gonna leave this up here. I'm just gonna talk in my last minute or so about some honorable mentions. There's the classic Michael Landon, I Was a Teenage Werewolf from the 1950s, and that led directly to Michael Jackson's Thriller. So that's a pretty fun ride. Teen Wolf, the movie, the comedy with Michael J. Fox. It's a moment in time. Love Michael J. Fox. Also, the TV show had some pretty wonderful young actors in it who have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. And from what I've heard, that show is pretty good. Van Helsing. Van Helsing does some great changes. They hired a dancer. Why? Here I'm getting confused. They hired a dancer. I guess I'll come. There we go. Hold on just 1 second, folks. There we go. Okay. So they hired a dancer. He had no acting experience at all. He's a Eastern European actor for the transformation. Very, very physical, very, very painful. Nothing you would ever want to go through, which is kind of brilliant. And he becomes, because it's comic book, the werewolf becomes way, way bigger than him. And it's, very much what we've seen in a lot of these movies in the design. It's very Howling in some of the other movies. So I wanted to mention that. Of course, I think the transformation in Bram Stoker's Dracula is brilliant. This thing is truly, truly scary, very high-end CGI. And then it's a long way from this kind of thing with the fully clothed guy. Looks like he could be going to work on the janitorial staff with a really, really cool hairdo. Right, Bram Stoker. Lupin in The Prisoner of Azkaban. David Thewlis does a wonderful job. Again, this idea in more modern movies that this is painful. This is not something you want to go through, that you're an outcast, that you're dangerous to everyone, that they're just waiting for you to turn and snap at any moment. And David Thewlis does an absolute brilliant job. I have to give sort of my own kind of Razzie to What We Do in the Shadows. The werewolves are horrible. Hey guys, we're werewolves, not swearwolves. It's terrible. It's horrible. To me, the movie's brilliant, and it evolves the minute the werewolves come in. They don't work in the TV show either. So werewolves are hard to mess up, but when they're done right, absolutely brilliant. And then just a couple of songs, of course, Werewolves of London, which is very heavily sexual metaphor kind of thing about the kind of thing that they were doing with Wolf in 1994. And of course, Duran Duran's Hungry Like the Wolf, which is also kind of self-explanatory. So we went an hour and 2 minutes. I think that's sufficient. I appreciate you all so deeply. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the show. Next week, Nicole Strickland of HMS Haunted Queen Mary and so much more, but that's what she's really known for. She's going to be on the show here with me. We're going to have a conversation on a topic that she will pick a couple days before the show. I don't know what it is. And then we're going to flip the mic and I'm going to be on her show an hour after this show ends. The 2 weeks then, part 2 of Angels and Demons with DA, with Devil's Advocate, and with Craig Ansell from Three Beards. Craig and I will also be making a pretty awesome announcement that night. So that's something to look forward to, something very, very exciting that we're going to share with you. I'm going to do the Paranormal Bill of Rights. It's been years. I'm going to go over those again, get back to the roots of ghost investigation, haunting, and the work that Tanya and I have done for over a decade as mediators between the living and the dead. I'm going to do an episode on Joe Campbell. I'm going to do an episode on Jack the Ripper. I think in 3 weeks, I'm going to do a deep reading of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Hopefully with a lot of things that you've never heard about the movie before, some very interesting things, and focus on that. I have a really nice slideshow for that as well. And then I'm taking the month of June to go be Allen Ginsberg and put this beard to work, making some money and reaching lots and lots of big audiences. And then we'll be back in July, and there'll be some really cool changes to the show. I have some guests that are coming on that are going to be talking about phenomenal things that we booked. We're going to have contributors come on. So it's all successful. Thank you all for staying with us. Everybody who congratulated me for my big screenwriting contract. I really, really appreciate it. It's kind of a game changer in my career. And that's going to be really, really fun. The Mothman play in the escape room. Lots of really cool things happening. You can catch this show audio only on Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. on ERT Radio. And you can also catch them on Friday nights. They're about 5 weeks behind where ERT is on Patriot Radio on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Prime Real Estate on their station, which is very, very cool. We're very, very honored. Three Beards is right around the time that we are on those nights. Also very cool. Everybody have a really good night. Stay safe. Happy Easter for everyone that applies. Good Friday, Holy Saturday, all of that. The grass is starting to grow. It's starting to get a little warmer. It's raining constantly here in Eastern Ohio. But anyway, take care, everyone. Thank you, Mona. Go back and watch the archive. I think it's a pretty good show. Lots of really, really good comments and all. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Join me next time on Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and the supernatural are just the normal and the natural. Good night.